Good morning. We're going to start today by talking about characters again. In both of these books that we've read this week, we identified the main character in our story. We said in this story, our main character was Chrysanthemum. And in this story, we said that our main character was Miss Nelson. And we had another kind of secondary character, Miss Swamp. In this story yesterday, your job was to listen to Miss Michaela tell you some fancy words or some adjectives that describe Chrysanthemum. We said that she was little, she was happy, she loved her name, and then we looked at Miss Nelson and we said that she was nice and she was pretty and she was kind. And we talked about Miss Swamp and said that she was mean and angry and rude. Those were all fancy words that we used to describe the characters in our two stories that we've read this week. Today, we're going to read another story. Now, this story really just has one main character. So your goal is not to identify the main character because I think that would be too easy for you today. Your goal is to pay attention to what our main character does. Those are called events in a story. An event in a story is important to help us understand what's happening throughout the story. Our story that we're going to read today is David Goes to School by David Shannon. I want you to pay attention to some things that David does. We're going to use our bodies to act out some of those things when Miss Montero is finished reading the story. David Goes to School by David Shannon. I will tell you before I start this story that David doesn't always make the best choices when he's at school. David Goes to School by David Shannon. David's teacher always said, "No, David, no yelling, no pushing, no running in the halls." So if he's not supposed to do those things, maybe take just a minute and think about some things he could do instead. If he's not yelling, what should he be doing? If he's not pushing, what should he be doing? And if he's not running in the halls, how should he be moving? David, you're tardy. Tardy means late. That means he was not on time for class. Look at what he's doing right there. He's peeking around the door and grinning at his teacher. He looks like he's being a little bit bashful, maybe. Bashful's kind of like embarrassed. Sit down, David. Oh, he's dancing at the front of the classroom. If his teacher's asking him to sit down, should he be up at the front of the classroom dancing? He looks a little wild. Wild would be a fancy word to describe the way David's acting right now. He's acting wild. Don't chew gum in class. Oh my, where would be a good place to chew gum? Probably not in the classroom. He's taking it out of his mouth. That's a lot of germs right there and a lot of sticky mess. David, raise your hand. Look, his classmate has her hand raised so that she can answer a question. David's yelling out. I think maybe a fancy word to describe David right here would be loud. She's being quiet. He's being loud. Those are opposite words. Keep your hands to yourself. He's got paint on his hands. Look, they're painting in class. And he's trying to touch his classmate with that paint on his hands. Do you think that's a good choice or a bad choice? The paint should probably stay where? On the paper. So David is being rowdy. That's a fancy word to describe him right now. He's not sitting in his chair. He's leaning over his desk trying to touch his classmate. That's probably also a little bit disrespectful. I don't think she wants paint in her hair, do you? Pay attention. David is staring out the window. He's looking at the clouds, the shapes in the clouds. I think a fancy word to describe David here would be distracted. If you're not paying attention to something, you're distracted. Wait your turn, David. Look, all these boys and girls are standing in line to get their food in the cafeteria, and David's just passing them all by. He's being impatient. That's a fancy word to describe David on this page. Impatient. He's skipping the line. I don't care who started it. Oh, what happened in the cafeteria? Food fight? Is it okay to throw your food at someone? That's probably rude, huh? Not very responsible? David, recess is over. David is spending some extra time outside on the playground playing recess. He's still playing with his ball, and the teacher called them inside. So he's not being a very good listener, is he? Shh. Now, when I look at this picture, I see lots of books in the background. I see them sitting at a table reading. What is David doing? Where do you think they are? Maybe in the library? In the library, we're supposed to be quiet and respectful of those around us who are reading their stories. And David is drumming on his book with his pencils and yelling. So I think a fancy word for David in this picture would be what? Loud. Yes, he's being loud again. Again? Oh, what's he doing? Looks like he's doing the TT dance. So he probably wasn't being very responsible when he was supposed to use the bathroom, and now he has to go again during class time. That's it, mister. You're staying after school. Uh-oh, David really upset his teacher this time. He's drawing on his table or on his desk with his crayons. We draw where? On paper. So David was being irresponsible. He was being, I don't know, what do you think's a word to describe David? What's a fancy adjective word we could use to describe David? Definitely not responsible. David, have you finished? What do you think he had to do? He's got a bucket of water, soapy water, and a sponge. And look at all these desks. See these little shiny spaces here? These little shiny marks? That means they're all squeaky clean. David washed all those desks until they were shiny and clean. How do you think he feels about that? He looks happy, doesn't he? Happy would be a good word to describe David. Or proud. He's proud of that hard work that he did. He made those desks look really nice. Good job, David. He's getting a gold star from his teacher for working so hard. So sometimes when we make mistakes and we fix those mistakes, it makes a big difference, doesn't it? It's okay to make a mistake. You just have to know how to fix it. Yes, David, you can go home now. So David's leaving school. Look, he's skipping down the sidewalk. He looks excited to go join his friends to play. So excited would be a fancy word for what David is doing. All right, your job if you're watching this from home is to pick 3 of the pages. You can pause the video on those pages, and you're going to act out the things that you saw David doing in that story, and then you're going to act out the right way to do those things. So if you are pretending that you're David and you're skipping line in the cafeteria, you'll show what that looks like. You'll use your body to act out skipping in line. You might pretend to push your friends to the side and get in front of them. But if you're making the right choice, you might pretend to stand in line holding your tray, just so, and being patient and waiting your turn. So remember, your job is to choose 3 things in the story that David did wrong and act those out, but then also act out the right way to do that. Because when we come back to school, Miss Montero is going to be looking to see that you know the correct way to behave in our classroom and on our campus. Thanks, guys.